There was a time in America when almost everyone knew someone who fixed things for a living. A man sharpened knives door to door. Kids delivered newspapers before school. Milk showed up at your front porch before sunrise. Local repairmen could keep a television alive for 20 years. Entire families survived on trades that barely exist anymore. And then, almost all of it vanished. Not because the work stopped mattering, but because the world changed underneath it. Factories closed. Main streets emptied. Machines replaced people. Convenience replaced craftsmanship. And slowly, America stopped needing the kinds of people it once depended on every single day. What disappeared wasn't just jobs. It was an entire way of life. And the question that haunts me, the one I can't shake, is this. Did we let it die? Or did we kill it ourselves? To understand what we lost, you have to go back. Not just to a decade, to a feeling. Picture America in the 1950s. Maybe the early 60s. The country is humming. Not perfectly, it never was, but there's a rhythm to daily life that people today can barely imagine. A rhythm built not on apps or algorithms, but on people. Real people. Showing up. Doing things with their hands. Your neighborhood wasn't just where you lived. It was a functioning economy. The iceman still came around in some towns. The knife sharpener announced himself with a bell on his cart. The fuller brush man knocked on your door with a suitcase full of brushes, cleaning products, and enough small talk to last an afternoon. Your mother might buy something. She might not. But she always answered the door. Because that was how commerce worked. It was human scaled. There was no Amazon. No Walmart supercenter eating every dollar within a 20-mile radius. Something broke, you fixed it. If you couldn't fix it, you found someone who could. Every town had a radio repairman. Every neighborhood had a TV repair shop with a hand-painted sign in the window. Cobblers resold shoes. Tailors let out seams. Nothing was disposable because nothing was cheap enough to throw away. And the jobs that held all of this together? They weren't glamorous. Nobody was getting rich. But they were real. They were respected. And for millions of American families, they were enough. That world didn't disappear overnight. It took decades. It took forces so large and so quiet that most people didn't notice until the men with the carts and the trucks and the hand-painted signs were simply gone. Let's talk about the work itself. Because these weren't just jobs. Each one was a small world. The milkman is maybe the most iconic. By 1950, over half of all milk sold in America was delivered directly to people's homes. Glass bottles. Wire carriers. A route that a man could run his entire life, know every family by name, watch children grow up from the front porch. The Borden Company alone employed tens of thousands of drivers. It was stable. It was dignified. And on a summer morning, hearing those bottles clink at your door before the sun came up, that sound meant the world was still working the way it was supposed to. Then there was the newspaper carrier, almost always a kid. 10, 11, 12 years old. Up before dawn. Canvas bag digging into one shoulder. Tossing the morning paper with a practiced snap of the wrist. This was a child's first business. You collected payments, tracked your accounts, handled complaints, learned the difference between a customer who tipped and one who didn't. By the 1970s, there were over 700,000 paper carriers in the United States. Most of them were teenagers learning what it meant to show up every single day no matter the weather. The TV repairman deserves his own chapter. When television exploded into American homes in the late 1940s and through the 1950s, those sets were investments, not conveniences. A family might pay the equivalent of 2 weeks' wages for a television. So when it broke, and it broke often, you didn't throw it out. You called someone. He came to your house with a case full of vacuum tubes, tested every one, and brought the picture back to life like a minor miracle. By 1960, there were an estimated 100,000 TV and radio repair shops across the country. Some of those men kept the same set working for 15-20 years. And speaking of keeping things alive, the shoe cobbler. The craft goes back centuries, but mid-century America kept it thriving. A good pair of leather shoes cost real money, so you maintained them. You had them resoled. You had the heel replaced. You handed them over to a man who smelled of leather and adhesive and had hands that looked like they'd been worked in slowly over a very long time. His shop was small and dark and smelled specific. and you knew exactly what that smell was the moment you walked in. There were switchboard operators, women almost exclusively sitting at massive boards, physically connecting one call to another. At peak employment, AT&T and its regional companies had over 350,000 operators working in the United States. They were the voice of the telephone system. They handled emergencies. They talked people through crises. They knew things about their communities that nobody else did, because they were the invisible thread connecting every conversation. Telegraph messengers were still pedaling bicycles across American cities into the 1950s, boys, usually in uniforms, carrying words that mattered. Births, deaths, business deals, news of wars. The telegram wasn't just a message, it was an event. And the kid who delivered it was part of that event, whether the news inside was good or devastating. The door-to-door salesman was an entire economy unto himself. Fuller Brush, Avon, Encyclopedia Britannica, Electrolux. These weren't just products, they were performances. A good salesman could walk into a stranger's living room and walk out 45 minutes later having sold a vacuum cleaner, charmed the dog, and gotten an invitation to dinner. By the early 1960s, Avon alone had over 100,000 representatives ringing doorbells across the country. Most of them were women earning their own income at a time when that was harder than it should have been. Ice delivery had largely faded by the 1950s as refrigerators spread, but in certain towns, certain neighborhoods, the iceman lasted longer than anyone expected. In parts of the rural South and in dense urban neighborhoods without reliable electricity, ice was still a commodity someone brought to your door and someone else paid for. The lamplighter was gone by then, electric streetlights had ended that job by the 1930s, but the spirit of it lingered in 1,000 other municipal trades that existed specifically because cities needed tending by human hands. Street sweepers with push brooms, icemen chipping blocks, elevator operators who knew which floor you needed before you said a word. Let's talk about soda jerks. That word, jerk, referred to the motion of pulling the handle on a soda fountain, and if you ever sat at a drugstore counter in 1955 and watched someone make you a cherry Coke from scratch, you know exactly what it felt like to be in the presence of a small art form. These teenagers and young adults memorized hundreds of combinations, moved fast, talked fast, and made you feel like you were in the only place in the world that mattered. The drive-in theater projectionist, the typewriter repairman, the hat blocker, a craftsman who steamed and reshaped felt hats so they looked new again. The rag-and-bone man who collected scrap material from back alleys and sold it to manufacturers. The radio actor whose entire career evaporated overnight when television arrived. The Pullman porter, for decades one of the largest employers of black men in America. Men of extraordinary dignity doing work that was both grueling and, for many, the first foothold into the middle class. Every single one of these was a real career, a real life, a real identity. Here is what people forget about the mid-20th century. Work was visible. You saw the people who kept your life running. You knew their names. You tipped them at Christmas. Your kids grew up watching them and understood, in some wordless way, that the world required human effort to function. That visibility mattered. When the milkman retired, people came to his retirement party. When the cobbler closed his shop, the neighborhood felt it. Not just as the loss of a service, as the loss of a person. A fixture. Someone whose presence was part of what made a place feel like home. The post-war economic boom supercharged all of this. Consumer spending exploded. Households had money to spend on services, on repairs, on the small luxuries of having someone come to your door. The middle class was expanding faster than at any point in American history, and that expansion fed every one of these trades. By the late 1950s, the Fuller Brush Company was generating over $100 million in annual sales, entirely through door-to-door salesmen. The Encyclopedia Britannica employed thousands of salespeople who cold-called homes and sat at kitchen tables convincing parents that 32 volumes of knowledge were the best investment they could make in their children's futures. And you know what? They weren't wrong. Those sets were extraordinary. And the men who sold them were often extraordinary too. Sharp, persuasive, hungry in the best possible sense. This was also the era of the local TV repairman as neighborhood celebrity. Seriously. In a time when television was the center of home life, When missing Ed Sullivan or the World Series because your set went out was a minor catastrophe, the man who could fix it was treated like he performed surgery. People remember those men. They remember their names. They remember the way they set down their toolbox and got to work without a single wasted motion. The paper route taught an entire generation of Americans something schools couldn't. That consistency is its own kind of genius. That showing up every single morning, regardless of how you felt, built something in you that nothing else could. That lesson came wrapped in cold air and a canvas bag. And it was worth every penny of the $40 or $50 a month those kids earned. And then the 60s turned into the 70s, and the 70s turned into the 80s, and everything started to shift. Not dramatically. Not in a way you could point to and say, there. That's the moment it ended. It was subtler than that. It was 1,000 small decisions that added up to something massive. Supermarkets got better. Refrigerators got cheaper. By the mid-1960s, home milk delivery had already begun its long decline. Not because people stopped drinking milk, but because the grocery store made the milkman feel unnecessary. Convenient was the word everyone used. Convenient. That word did more damage to American working life than almost any other. Television sets got cheaper and more reliable, and then disposable. Why pay a repairman $40 to fix a set when a new one cost $80? The logic was impossible to argue with. And so the repair shops closed one by one through the 1970s and 1980s. The men who ran them were often too old to reinvent themselves. Some found related work in electronics. Many just retired. Their sons didn't follow them into the trade because the trade was already dying. Direct dialing killed the switchboard operator almost instantly, and the speed of that death was staggering. In 1970, there were still hundreds of thousands of telephone operators employed in the United States. By 1980, the number had been cut nearly in half. By 2000, it was a rounding error. The technology didn't ease them out. It eliminated them, and the only ceremony was silence. The door-to-door salesman outlasted almost everyone, but suburbanization killed him slowly. People stopped answering the door for strangers. Crime fears, real and exaggerated, made the unannounced visitor feel threatening rather than welcome. The FTC passed regulations in the 1970s giving consumers the right to cancel door-to-door purchases within 3 days, which sounds protective and was, but also told salesmen that the country didn't trust them anymore. Walmart arrived, and then it spread. And then it was everywhere, with its fluorescent lights and its impossibly low prices and its promise that everything you needed was in one building, available always, no relationship required. Main Street didn't die because of one thing. It died because of everything at once. And with Main Street went the hat blocker, the cobbler, the soda jerk, the typewriter repairman. They went because the economics stopped working. Because Americans chose price over craft, speed over relationship, disposability over repair. We chose it. That's the part that stinks. Nobody forced us. We just kept making the slightly easier choice over and over, until one day we looked up and the men with the carts and the bells and the hand-painted signs were simply no longer there. There are people alive today who remember all of this. Who remember watching their father leave before sunrise on a milk route. Who remember earning their first real money throwing papers in the dark. Who remember calling the TV repairman and feeling genuine relief when he walked through the door. And there are people who have no memory of any of it, who have grown up in a world where everything you need arrives in 2 days, where nothing is meant to last, where the idea of a stranger showing up at your door to sharpen your knives sounds not like a memory but like a fairy tale. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Progress is real. Convenience is real. The world these jobs disappeared into, our world, has given people things the milkman's era never could. Medicine, mobility, connection across distances that would have stunned anyone in 1955. But something was lost too. Something that doesn't have an easy name. Call it dignity in small work. Call it the knowledge that a person's hands and their reliability and their willingness to show up, day after day in the cold, in the heat, on routes and routes and routes, was enough, was worthy, was a life. We built an economy that forgot those people were ever there. And now, in the silence where those trades used to be, we sometimes feel something we can't quite identify. It's not nostalgia exactly. It's not just memory. It's the faint echo of a bell on a knife sharpener's cart, drifting down a street that no longer exists, in a neighborhood that remembers everything. If that hit you somewhere you weren't expecting, share this video with someone who lived it. And if you want to feel this again, subscribe to the Nostalgia Vault. Because every decade has a story worth telling, and we are just getting started.